So the reason I wanted to make this video is because Godzilla 2014 used to be one of my favorite movies of all time growing up. I was about 12 to 13 years old, and this movie was the one that made me a super fan of Godzilla. I used to run around mocking his roar to the best of my abilities and annoying everyone in my house. But at that time, I didn't really know what a well-directed movie was. I was only 13, just trying to see Godzilla going crazy. And at the time, I was satisfied. But when I look back at it now, or when I watch that movie now, I get the opposite feeling. When I originally saw the movie, I did feel like I wanted to see more Godzilla, but I never really put any real critical thought into why I wasn't seeing enough Godzilla in a Godzilla film. And that is what we are going to talk about today. Because Godzilla Minus One, I'm sure everyone watching this video has watched and heard about it, was a totally different story. So today we are going to compare both movies and show how exactly Godzilla Minus One did it right. I do want to say a couple things about both films. These could be seen as honorable mentions, I guess. Both movies had a great soundtrack and great sound effects. The sound effects on the atomic breath scenes never get old. It's not only beautiful to see, but music to my ears, whether it's 2014 Godzilla charging up, or Minus One's atomic breath explosion. Both soundtracks are great, but nothing comes close to Minus One's because not only do we get his old school original roar, but we also get his original soundtrack. And then as a bonus, we get great choir scores, an intense chase scene score that just adds so much more tension. And more eerie music that feels like it's lingering over the whole film, which gives it that extra mwah. When the movie's already good and you have the music to just elevate that score by 1 or 2 more points, it can really just make the movie that much better. Godzilla has some great scores too, especially when it came to that scene where they're jumping out of the plane and flying over the city. Or when Godzilla is being stealthy and you hear the music cues with the lightning. Or the times where it's just complete silence, because silence can add to the movie too. And just hearing the sound effects, Neither of these movies ever fail when it comes to sound effects, and I just thought I had to mention that. Both of these movies had great actors and they all played their parts. I recently watched a documentary on YouTube where the director of Godzilla 2014, Gareth Edwards, tells us how he purposely cut away during all these moments where Godzilla was about to fight, or just do anything for that matter.
You see him properly, and then don't see him. You what? That's my favorite bit, I think, is that you've sat there and you go, okay, we're gonna get it, we're gonna get it, we're gonna get it. And then we cut to this child. That's when I chuckle, I get my most thrill, because you're supposed to have the big battle for 20 minutes, and I love the fact we don't.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Basically edging the audience so that it's more satisfying when you see the big monster fight at the end. The only problem is the fight wasn't big enough, and it most certainly wasn't long enough, nor was it satisfying enough to leave the audience feeling like they watched a Godzilla movie. It actually felt like we watched a human movie with Godzilla as a cameo.
Yeah, boy.
And that's what leads us to Godzilla Minus One. When Godzilla Minus One came out last year, it was definitely one of my favorite movies of the year and most people's favorite movie of the year with subtitles. I had to convince my mom to come see that movie with me because she did not want to read subtitles. And that goes for most people in America. Yeah, it's annoying and dumb that they're too lazy to read, but that's how it is, and most people don't want to read a movie. I even brought my girlfriend to see this movie, and I purposely didn't tell her the movie was in Japanese so that she was forced to stay and watch it with me. During the movie, she asked me, are they ever going to go to America and show America? But I had to break the news that the entire movie was in Japanese, and she gave me such a blank death stare. But hey, at the end of the movie, we all had a great time and everyone enjoyed the movie. You know a movie is good when you take people who aren't interested and don't want to read subtitles, and they come out saying it was really good. It was so good, in fact, Gareth Edwards came out and said, there were a lot of things that I felt were very new for Godzilla, and I felt jealous the whole time I was watching the movie. This is what a Godzilla movie should be. Godzilla Minus One must be mentioned as a candidate for the best Godzilla movie of all time. And it is truly what I would call a perfect Godzilla movie. When Gareth Edwards said this, I think he finally realized what he wanted his vision to actually be and his mistakes from the movie he directed. And that's where I believe his jealousy stems from. I am glad he is humble enough though to see what other movies did better than his so that he can hopefully eventually apply it to his own. And he's willing to give other directors props for doing it better than he did. Godzilla Minus One is a film that shows how Godzilla was created and his impact on humanity. And he's a consequence of human experimentation in 1946. It covers environmentalism, the consequences of tampering with nature, and how Japan treated its people. Now, before we get into it, I do want to mention how much of a menace Godzilla was in this movie. He looks absolutely terrifying. And it's amazing what they was able to do with just a budget of $20 million. That's literally a horror film budget. Not only is Godzilla scary, but he's aware of his own actions. The people of Odo Island were familiar with Godzilla, and I heard somewhere that they would feed him, but that could also be possibly wrong. But the reason I say Godzilla was familiar with his own actions, because he didn't harm Shikishima when he was aware of his presence. And since he didn't shoot at him, Godzilla left him alone. We still don't know the extent of his intelligence in this movie, because he just wants to destroy everything. But then sometimes he skips out on destroying things and decides to ignore naval ships that are blatantly attacking him. He's almost like a big child with not much of a thought process, just picking up and playing with things if he feels like it. And if you're able to catch his attention well enough, he's just gonna blast you with a huge beam. Cause man, I feel bad for those tanks. And we're not gonna mention that those tanks look like they were from a World of Tanks trailer. I don't believe we've ever seen Godzilla's atomic breath like this before. He charges up from his tail and up, but with a twist. Instead of him being able to blast his atomic breath at a constant rate, it rather comes out as a quicker beam that creates an atomic explosion. Godzilla in this movie is literally destruction reincarnated, a walking nuke in the flesh. We see Godzilla constantly in this film at all the right moments, and there's never a lack of his presence. We get great action scenes with him, ideas we haven't seen before on the big screen. We get a very intense scene where he's chasing Shikishima's boat while they try to drop mines into his mouth. Just think about that concept for a second. It's absolutely insane. It's an insane scenario to think of, and it's very unique. Then Godzilla can also regenerate crazy fast in this movie. He's already a walking tank that can't even die if you blow up his head with an airplane that has a bomb in it. It was so nice to see just an angry, psychotic Godzilla because he gives you real fear. He clearly has no affection for human life. 2014 Godzilla focused more on the boots on the ground view, the view from the human's perspective. These shots give us some awesome perspectives on Godzilla, and that film did a great job giving us a great sense of scale, putting you in the human shoes and making you think about what you would do in these situations. The atmosphere in 2014 Shin Godzilla was also done better than any other MonsterVerse movie I've seen, or any Godzilla film I've seen. It provides a great sense of realism. It has scenes of diving through a destroyed city with dust from collapsed buildings that make it hard to see, and the only thing guiding you through this battlefield are flashes of lightning, the monsters roaring, the fires lit from huge monsters destroying the city going quiet after an EMP. All you hear is the Muto's echoes. Godzilla's chunky feet hitting the ground. The sound of Godzilla's radiation flowing through his body. And I could go on forever with all these things that gives that movie such a great atmosphere. It is truly unmatched, and Gareth Edwards does a great job delivering on that. Obviously, the CGI in these movies are always top tier, but I think even Godzilla's design is better than Minus One's. I know Minus One's is trying to be like the original Godzilla, but I'd still think it's fair to compare the designs. Godzilla in the newer MonsterVerse movies is painted more as a hero, having more intimate moments with humans, not purposely out to kill them, but they're more like small ants in the way. And in the later movies, he works with the humans to a certain degree. But mainly he's seen as the territorial monster that brings balance to the surface. Unfortunately though, this movie's biggest sin is that we don't see Godzilla nearly enough. Every time we see Godzilla in this film, it's for a brief second and then the camera cuts away. The craziest part about it is that it was done that way on purpose. They wanted to give a feeling of, and I quote, suspense and restraint. And they said it's about what you don't see versus what you do see.
So that by the end of the movie, when you get to that creature on creature action that you've been waiting for, it really delivers.
It was really important that when we finally revealed Godzilla in all his glory the first time, I kind of wanted to spend 5 minutes building up to that, not just like, oh, here's 2 shots and then we see him. It was like, all right, let's really milk this.
He also said he did this so that when you get to the end of the film, it'll deliver and be satisfying when you see the final battle. The problem with that is that there is barely a battle, but we do get to see Godzilla's first ever kill with his atomic breath, which was amazing to see and is still probably one of my favorite Godzilla scenes of all time. This man really thought the people who came to see this movie didn't want to see Godzilla as much as possible. Like, come on, at least don't cut away when the kaijus are about to fight. And this would have been slightly more excusable if the human characters weren't so boring. Human characters are always a huge factor in Godzilla movies. They have to be. They have always been since the beginning of time. I'd say it'd be fair to say that the human aspect of these movies are the most important, strictly because they're what push the plot forward. The story of Godzilla Minus One follows a kamikaze pilot by the name of Koichi Shikishima, a group of scientists, government officials, and volunteer civilians as they navigate the chaos caused by Godzilla. This is the first time I watched a Godzilla film and felt tension for the humans. I cared about all of our main characters' survival, especially Shikishima. You can't help but sympathize with him and everything he's been through. He starts as a kamikaze pilot who ran from battle because your duty as a kamikaze pilot is to destroy the enemy battleships by literally crashing straight into them. Shikishima's character arc begins with him not fulfilling his duty, and because of this, he's seen as a coward by the ones who know what his duty was. Instead, he flew from battle and landed on Odo Island so he could get his ship repaired. The problem was that his plane didn't actually need to be repaired. One repairman comes to Shikishima and tells him he admires what he did and that they need more men like him. But the majority of his nation don't agree, especially his government. His character arc truly begins to unfold once Godzilla makes his entrance on the island he lands on. And once again, he isn't able to fulfill his duty, which causes the death of everyone around him besides one man, Sosaku Tachibana. Now obviously he wouldn't have killed Godzilla, but the fact remains that he didn't try. Not saying it was right for him to want to kill himself or put himself in harm's way, but based on these times, it was seen as cowardice, and it weighs heavily on his mind for the rest of the film, because it's twice now that he did not fulfill his duty, solely out of fear. Godzilla is used as as a catalyst for Shigishima's actions in this movie, while still having Godzilla in this movie for more than enough time. Then he comes home to his homeland that's completely destroyed and his family killed by the nuke dropped by America. He receives even more guilt when Sumiko Oda blames him for being here because he was a kamikaze pilot. Because of that, he shouldn't even be alive. When Godzilla comes and destroys Ginza, Shigeshima feels even more useless, especially when Noriko saves him and he believes that she dies. Her and his adopted child was all they had left, and once again he was able to do nothing. Whether these things are under his control or not, he can't help but feel guilty. He has this internal battle throughout the entire movie until it's time to strike back at Godzilla. Shigeshima is finally ready to face his death as he's furious with Godzilla and himself. He pretty much has nothing else to lose and wants to make up for every time he's failed. Shigeshima comes to terms with his fate, and with this he's completed his character arc. So when Tachibana realizes and sees that Shigeshima has finally become the man he needs to be, he rewards him with a way out of his death in the form of an ejector seat, and that way he can pull the ejector seat right before he crashes into Godzilla. It's beautiful to see how everything ties back together, along with a satisfying climax that is just much more pleasing for the audience, all without sacrificing scenes of Godzilla, while also providing thought-provoking themes that challenge our understanding of power, responsibility, and the fragile balance between humanity and the environment. Godzilla Minus One offers a fresh perspective on Godzilla, combining all of these elements to make an unforgettable Godzilla movie, and now ranked up there at the top with the best Godzilla movies. The human story in Godzilla 2014 was so dry I barely want to go over it, especially after talking about Godzilla Minus One's fantastic story. But it doesn't really offer much, so I'll be brief. This movie's main character, Ford Brody, was really used as an excuse to get an up-close and personal view with Godzilla, and it feels like they were forced to write this story in order to give Gareth Edwards his vision of a boots on the ground experience of Godzilla. You form no real attachment or bond with him, and in fact I was left feeling like I didn't really care about his fate. He's a soldier who's connected to the Mutos because of his dad. Everyone called his dad crazy and a conspiracy theorist because he used to work at a factory that collapsed because of the Mutos, but everyone else just thought it was a natural disaster. He lost his wife during that incident, and ever since then his father's been trying to figure out what happened. When Ford's dad dies to an incident with the Mutos, just like his mother did, proving his dad right, he feels obligated to killing it. And that's pretty much it. I mean, he has a son and a wife who happens to be in the city that Godzilla and the Mutos are fighting in, but besides that, we really just take a back seat to him going on missions to kill the Mutos. The story is okay, but unfortunately this, combined with constantly cutting away from Godzilla every time he's about to fight, brings this movie to a much lower score than it needed to be. It's too bad they killed off his father, played by Bryan Cranston, because he was by far the most interesting character and fantastic actor.
My wife died here!
It really sucked when he was killed off because he was the only interesting character that you actually felt bad for. So yeah, basically the moral of the story is if you're gonna have a simple plot for the humans, you've got to at least make up for it in the Godzilla scenes, or vice versa, or just have a perfectly balanced story. But yeah, that is all I had for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know what other comparisons you want to see, whether it's Godzilla or any other TV show or movie, anime, anything. Just let me know down below in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.